And yes, the channel has been missing for a while because right now I am working in some personal projects. But since we are in the Halloween season, I couldn't miss the opportunity of putting my 2 cents in this such a wonderful era. Of course, even though I am in this forced pause, it doesn't mean that I didn't watch about 100 horror movies during this period. A list of great trash classics like It's Alive, Altered States, Tales from the Crypt, The Demon Knight, Black Roses, a great rock and roll horror, an old classic, The Brain That Wouldn't Die, The Haunting of Julia, Intruder, a great slasher horror from the gang of Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell, Shopping Mall, and many others that if you want to pause this video to take notes on these titles and check them later, you will have a great fun. It's all great trashness, but since I want to choose one title only to talk in this season, I decided to watch 2 sequels of a movie that I have already made a video here in the channel. The Return of the Living Dead, movie from 1985 written by Dan O'Bannon, that is a classic of horror with comedy and amazing zombie visual effects. And since I decided it was time to watch both number 2 and number 3, I put one after the other. And Return of the Living Dead 2 is a good movie, filled with very interesting visual effects, but it doesn't move away from the most cliché elements of a horror zombie movie, people running away from a horde of zombies, but that doesn't reach the highs of peak horror comedy and memorable scenes from the first one. And then we move to the third one that, oh yes, there we have a very interesting subversion of the franchise, and I couldn't help but fall in love. This is a movie from 1993 that shows basically what happens when a studio needs to force the production of a sequel not to lose the rights of the franchise. Because the first production company sold the rights of Return of the Living Dead to a second studio called Trimark that had already produced classics like Brain Dead from Peter Jackson. But still they had to produce and release a new movie in the franchise in 1993 or the rights would go back to the first studio. So they called the director Brian Usna, who had directed some horror movies in his career, including one called Society. And I just watched this one, and I gotta say, it's one of the most interesting and bizarre horror trash movies that I have ever seen. So the director's chair was given to him to reanimate this stinky corpse that was this franchise, which the second movie had been a little flop in cinemas. And for those who have watched the first 2 movies, you know that they are non-official sequels of Night of the Living Dead by George Romero, but with much more comedy and trashness. And here the studio guidelines to the director Brian Usna was to do anything he wanted with the sequel. So he could do a movie that was completely different in tone with the first 2, but he had to link this sequel to the franchise by bringing back the toxic gas trioxin, which is responsible for transforming every human in zombies in these movies. With that in mind, he decided to do a 180 degrees curve in the most cartoonish elements of the first 2 movies in order to do something that kept the trash idea but was a little more serious. Actually, a dark romance between a zombie girl and a guy who wants to bring her back to life. Almost like a Romeo and Juliet of the zombies. And the movie focuses on this couple called Kurt and Julie Walker. And both are these rock and roll kids who are living the peak of a young teen romance. But Kurt's father is a general working for the army that is doing some tests with, guess what? Zombies. Exactly, like any movie that has the military sticking their noses into this whole subject of creatures, here they want to use these zombies as combatants controlled by them, having their bodies trapped into an exoskeleton that will give them much more control over their actions. Of course, the experiment doesn't work too well, and after an accident where a zombie kills 2 lab scientists on the military base, the general is removed from the project and he will have to move cities. Something that doesn't please young Kurt at all because he just moved to this city and met Julie, and he's super in love with her. And since both of them are rebels without a cause, they decide to run away in Kurt's motorcycle one night, only to suffer an accident on the road, and our poor Julie pays the price. But since nobody that dies in these movies really stay dead, Kurt will secretly bring her corpse to the military base and use the trioxin gas to bring her back. What a great idea. So our dear Julie will be resurrected as a zombie, having all the zombie cliché elements like hunger for brain, killing any enemy that opposes to her and Kurt. But at the same time, she also discovers a new method to contain the pain of transforming into a zombie, which is hurting her own skin with pieces of glass, metal rings, nails and spikes through her flesh, everything she can use to self-harm and contain this pain, which is a new element in this kind of stories, slowly transforming her into one of the most visually gorgeous zombies of cinema history. She's goth, she's badass, she's strange and beautiful at the same time. It's incredible. Here the character Julie Walker is played by Melinda Clark. By the way, she's credited as Mindy Clark in this movie, probably because this is one of her first jobs, but she was seen in many other movies like Spawn. Many will remember her as the gorgeous mother from the character Marissa Cooper in the TV show The O.C. And in this movie, she portrays this character that is kind of wild, but also kind of charismatic at the same time, living the adrenaline of this new love, but is caught by surprise by this event that not only kills her, but also brings her back to life as a zombie. And just as the other movies in the franchise, this pain of transforming into a zombie is very well portrayed by certain characters in the stories. Here, this is portrayed by her character, and at the same time that she finds this self-harming device to contain the pain, which gives the impression that this is a parallel with drug consumption, kind of like the movie Brain Damage from the director Frank Henenlotter, who directed Frankenhooker, that I recently watched and is great too, but also transforms her into a new, very interesting creature. And then she becomes the real protagonist of this movie. So much so that the poster for it has her face only with the incredible makeup. An excellent poster that I remember seeing at the VHS cover in the video stores when I was a kid, and I remember thinking, well, I don't know who is this character, but must be the Queen of the Dead or something like that. Turns out that is not that, but is a memorable look nevertheless. A perfect mixture of gothic and grotesque and beautiful at the same time. And that's what I liked so much about this movie. Maybe it's not better than the first one, but it's a perfect counterpoint to the first one, doing what I love to see in movie franchises, bringing new ideas to an already established concept. The movie has its cliches like zombies chasing people. By the way, amazing zombies masterfully created by the makeup department, especially the zombie from the military base that is kind of melted and his head splits in two, showing the skeleton being revealed inside the flesh. Oof, it's gorgeous and nasty. But with all these cliches, you have this also interesting story, this romance created by the director Brian Usna. A romantic horror movie. I always loved this kind of subversions, and of course the script has some forced elements into it, like this gang of Mexicans that they meet at the supermarket, and they're very evil, and they're just there to be killed in nasty ways by Julie, but it's cool because she ends up creating more zombies in the middle of the story, and that culminates in a third act where you have these creatures escaping from the military base, creating a havoc that could be developed into a fourth story, because it becomes implicit that they actually escape for good of this place. Unfortunately, the franchise after that only went further into the dumpster, and it's better not to remember the next movies. Fortunately, the gore here is guaranteed, and yes, the movie is pure trashness. The low budget is pretty clear on the screen. When it starts, it actually feels like a TV movie, even though it gained a little theatrical run in the movie theaters at the time. But it has a very tight script, and it leaves an open ending that could be interpreted as tragic or as a way to open the door for more stories with these characters in the future. I would have loved to see more stories with Julie Walker, especially because now she has become a goddess of horror movies for me. But as the director's intention was to make this tragic horror romance, a gothic Romeo and Juliet, it ends up very fitting with all that came before. With that, Return of the Living Dead 3 is a great horror movie choice if you want to spend your Halloween season with a B horror movie that has this great take on zombies and an iconic character. Oh, and of course, a lot of gore for the ones who love it. So this is it. Have you watched Return of the Living Dead 3? Comment below. And if you are liking the content of Trashing with Gus, don't forget to subscribe because here we have much more content of horror movies, animes, animation, action movies, everything you love. Sometimes we hit the pause button when it's necessary, but once in a while we come back to bring a great movie for you to enjoy it. And this is it. Thank you so much. See you guys in the next trashing video, and bye bye.